Yes, thank you. I may as well push it down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the National Housing Trust was established in the mid-1970s. It's 1976 to be specific, and it is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. It was one of the significant achievements of the government of that era in raising capital to transform the housing opportunities for Jamaicans who were suffering from very inadequate, dehumanizing shelter conditions. That situation may have changed somewhat in the sense that the work of the National Housing Trust has delivered hundreds of thousands of housing solutions over the 50 years of its existence. But Jamaica still suffers from a chronic shortage of affordable housing. Young people in particular may aspire to own their own home, but find it very difficult to do so. The accessibility and affordability of what is being developed by developers in the market is beyond their means. And the Housing Trust ought to be purposed and empowered to meet that critical need. By way of background, it is true that in 2013, when Jamaica had a debt to GDP ratio of 147% and was in an IMF program or seeking to get into an IMF program in circumstances where the previous program had been crashed by the previous government and our name was mud with the international financial community, we had to run a primary surplus of 7.5% of GDP, meaning that we had to run a surplus of revenue over non-debt expenditure of 7.5% of GDP. And the way in which that could be done at the time, based on an analysis of an international accounting firm which advised the cabinet, was that for 4 years, $11.4 billion per annum could be taken from the NHT to get Jamaica out of that crisis. And that was done. At the time, an NGO which had an affiliation with the opposition took the matter to court. The opposition at the time was strongly against the use of the funds of the NHT to help Jamaica solve its fiscal crisis. The court ruled that the legislation was lawful and it was implemented for those 4 years. When the government changed in 2016, the government that had formally opposed this legislation while in opposition proceeded to endorse the arrangement, passing legislation not once, not twice, but now 3 times to extend the period of extracting these resources from the NHT for 4 years at a time. In the election campaign of 2025, the People's National Party indicated that we were against any further extension of this arrangement. Jamaica's fiscal situation had fundamentally changed compared to where it was in 2013. Whereas the debt to GDP ratio back then was in the 140% range, it had been reduced due to the success of the fiscal responsibility framework to the 60% range. And there was no justification for diverting the resources of the National Housing Trust from its statutory purpose of providing shelter, affordable shelter for Jamaicans who need it, to becoming a fund to support the government's general budgetary needs. The government is well aware of that commitment that we made, and one would have expected that if they were seeking our support for this, they would have come and had dialogue with us and explained why they saw the necessity to extend this for another 5 years. There has been no such consultation or discussion. We are painfully aware that Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica in late October last year, and that the lingering effects on the economy are real. Had they come to us and said, well, for the fiscal year 26-27 that we're now in, we need to have this extended for a year, we would have probably said we will support that. Indeed, if they had said, we are going to need it for 2 years because it's going to take 2 years to deal with the recovery from the hurricane, we would have probably told them, well, let's do it 1 year at a time and see how it plays out. Because things have changed. For example, in the current fiscal year, the increased price of oil and gas has meant that the government is enjoying a windfall on the SCT on fuel, which was not in the budget. We don't know how much that windfall is yet, but there's no doubt that it's real. So, had we had those kind of discussions, we could have probably agreed some way of addressing this matter. But in keeping with the way that the government treats its opposition and the lack of consultation on matters that they know are of fundamental importance to us, they have tabled this bill, extending this arrangement for 5 more years. In the meantime, the NHT is outsourcing much of its lending to the private sector now. It has to be paying a subsidy to the private sector for the interest rate on those mortgages, which is a cost to the NHT, and the shelter crisis of Jamaicans continues in a very real sense and is not being met by the housing policy of this government. Mr. Speaker, that is the context in which this bill is being debated today. We will not support this bill. This bill could have achieved our support had we had consultations and worked out what we consider a reasonable arrangement given the hurricane that passed. But to bring a bill here and to say that you're going to take another $57.5 billion out of the National Housing Trust over the next 5 years is unacceptable to us. We do not agree with it. And in the 50th anniversary of the National Housing Trust, implemented by the late, great Prime Minister of Jamaica, Michael Joshua Manley, we will not support this bill. Mr. Speaker, that is our position. Thank you.